Hello, under this tab of why do we need an emergency action plan, we're going to look over a historical overview of some past emergencies and what has happened during those events. Below this PowerPoint in the website are links for additional information that I highly encourage you to go through and look at and just see what else happened in the big picture of things instead of just the single parts that I'm pointing out for each one of these. And I'm just taking a small snippet of each one of these historical incidents to look at to show you why we need to have an emergency action plan and why we need to plan for emergencies. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, otherwise known as OSHA, has defined workplace emergency as an unforeseen situation that threatens your employees, customers, or the public, disrupts or shuts down your operations, or causes physical or environmental damage. Emergencies may be natural or man-made. As you can tell by this definition, it encompasses a lot of different areas as far as what could be an emergency. But some of the ones that I've picked out for this particular instruction, I picked out for specific reasons as we go through it. Back in 1911, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, this was the largest tragic event in U.S. history. It occurred. Hello, we're now going to look at some historical emergencies of the past that have shaped the way America looks at emergencies and how the laws have been written due to each of these events occurring at different times in history. The definition of workplace emergency as defined by OSHA is an unforeseen situation that threatens your employees, customers, or the public. It disrupts or shuts down your operations or causes physical or environmental damage. Emergencies may be natural or they may be man-made. This is a very broad definition of what an emergency is. And I've got 5 case studies that have occurred through history. And I highly encourage you to go back and look at each one of them individually and get a broader understanding of what happened and why laws changed regarding this. In the world of safety, many times laws are made because somebody has died, or they're otherwise referred to as written in blood. And an emergency definitely falls under these categories. The first one that I'd like to look at is the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. This was the largest tragic event in U.S. history. It occurred in March of 1911. It broke out at the Triangle Waist Factory in New York City. Within 18 minutes, 146 people were dead as a result of this fire. This fire occurred on the 9th floor of the building. One of the staircases was blocked and was not able to be used. There was combustibles all over the place. This was a sewing factory per se, and no sprinklers. There's a lot of different things that happened here that contributed to this being the largest tragic event in U.S. history. But the link that's listed below gives a very good definition, a good oversight of what happened that day. So I'd highly encourage you to look at that one. The next one we're going to look at is one that occurred in North Carolina that really shaped a lot of things that have happened here as far as the Department of Labor, Occupational Safety and Health, and also the Fire Marshal's office. And that's Imperial Foods located in Hamlet, North Carolina, which is no longer in business. This occurred in 1991. It was the worst industrial tragedy in North Carolina history. The main problems that occurred here were all the doors to the outside of the building but one was locked, or you were unable to exit because it was blocked from the outside. 25 people died that day and another 40 people were injured. This is the only time in North Carolina OSHA history that a criminal willful citation was issued and someone went to jail for this incident. It is now, not saying it wasn't the law then, but it's now really enforced more with the Fire Marshal's office and also OSHA that all doors you can get out of. They could have an alarm on them, but you can still get out of them. But this one had a big impact not only on the people that were involved but also on that community also. The next one we're going to look at is West Pharmaceuticals in Kinston, North Carolina, and this was in 2003. And the unique thing about this one, even though it was a big tragedy for Eastern North Carolina, this was a company that had done everything right as far as their emergency action plan. Not saying that they didn't have other citations involved here, because there were citations issued, but when it came to their emergency action plan, they had one, they practiced it, they worked with their local fire department on it. Everybody in emergency management, fire department, had been through West Pharmaceuticals either as a visitor, they knew somebody there, or they had worked there themselves. So it was a very tragic accident to the community. But the big thing that this one brings to the table as far as a case study is that what do you do when you've done everything right and it all blows up? For this particular incident, their water lines were busted. They got blown up. So they had no water coming to the plant for fire suppression. The telephone lines were taken down. The computer lines were taken down. Power lines were taken down. So they had to resort to other things. So when you start to look at accountability for this particular company, they ended up sitting on the back of a tailgate of a truck going, okay, I saw so-and-so here today, and I saw so-and-so, and I saw so-and-so, and they had to actually manually do a list of their employees to figure out who was on the premises and who wasn't. So looking at this, you always want to have your contingency plans. You've got your first plan, and then you want to have a backup plan or another way of being accountable for all your employees and what's going on. This even works for if I can't get my keys or my purse. How am I going to get home if I can't get back into the building? You know, what am I going to do? And you can even take it as far as your personal life also. The next one we're going to look at happened also in 2003, and this is the Station House fire in Rhode Island. This was a nightclub. And we always talk about workplace safety as far as how to get out of a building or whatever, but have you thought about when you go out with your family or friends, how are you going to get out of where you're at? Do you look for those other exits? There's a link below that has that's linked to YouTube, and it's video from the night of that fire and what happened. It's pretty right on as far as graphic up until you get to the end. So if you're not into explicit stuff, stop right after you get to the fire part. But it was very interesting. And the biggest thing here was everybody had gone in one door, left by one door, and didn't realize there were other exits in this building so that they could escape. The last one that we're going to talk about is ConAgra, which occurred in 2009 in Garner. And the reason I bring this one up is because when you listen to most of the interviews that took place on the news, everybody was talking about a smell of gas. They smelled gas all morning long. You know, you smell gas, my first thought is leave the building, get somebody to check it out. But there was still citations issued for this one, and it also changed the National Fuel Gas Code as far as how you can purge gas inside buildings. But this one was also, you know, another tragic event in this area. Many of us, you know, watched it as it occurred. So lessons learned from these is combustibles should always be kept away from exits. Exits should not be blocked. Sometimes the best of plans can go awry. You know, make your contingency plans. No matter where you're at, always have that exit awareness. How are you going to get out if you can't leave the door that you came in? And the last one is self-preservation for one's own safety. If you don't feel safe, figure out why you don't feel safe and take appropriate action. Tell somebody else what's going on, your supervisor or whoever's in charge of the emergency action plan, your floor coordinator. Just make sure somebody else is aware that something's wrong, but you don't know what, but you've got a good reason to bring it up. So these are lessons learned. And then as we go through this training program, we will look at other ways of how you can protect yourself at work and adhere to the emergency action plan for the courthouse.